It's important to note that many cases do not qualify for premium processing, but for those case types that do qualify, it can be a tremendous option. Filing an immigration case can be very stressful, not to mention the very long processing times that ensue after you file the case. In this video, I want to cover 5 ways that can help you speed up the processing of your immigration case. So let's get started. The first tip that I want to go over is to make sure that when you're filing your case, you include all the necessary documentation that is required for that particular case. Now, depending on whatever case you're filing, whether it's a marriage-based green card application or an investor visa of some kind or a green card application based on having a job offer in the United States, there's many different types of immigration applications or petitions that you could be filing. And depending on the specific type of case that you're filing, there will be specific documents that you need to include with that case. Now, the reason why I mention the importance of including all that documentation is because if you do not include the necessary documentation for the case, what can happen is that USCIS can send you something called an RFE, a request for additional evidence. And that's basically a request from USCIS where they have additional questions about your case or they need additional documentation for your specific case, and they're requesting that you provide that information. The problem with an RFE is that it delays your case. Again, USCIS is now sending you this request. You have to review that request, compile all the documentation that's required, submit it back to USCIS, and then USCIS has to review that documentation before they can render a decision on your case. So the best case scenario is to avoid an RFE altogether by giving USCIS all the documentation at the outset. Now, I do want to make clear that in many cases, you can provide all the documentation that you think will be necessary for the case, and USCIS will still come back and issue an RFE for your case. So it's not a foolproof plan, but by including all the necessary documentation and being very mindful regarding the documentation that you submit with your case, you can limit the likelihood of receiving an RFE, which can ultimately result in your case being processed faster. Now, tip number 2 is, if possible, select premium processing for your case. What is premium processing? Premium processing is an optional service that's available for certain types of immigration cases where you pay an additional fee to USCIS, and USCIS will speed up the processing of your case. In many instances, premium processing can result in a response to your case within 15 days. So there are many case types that could take 6 months, 8 months, or even longer. But in those particular case types, if premium processing is available for that case, it can reduce that timeline to get an initial response on your case down from that 6 to 8 or more months down to 15 days. So premium processing can also be a tremendous option to speed up the processing of your immigration case. It's important to note that many cases do not qualify for premium processing, but for those case types that do qualify, it can be a tremendous option. Now, the third option that I want to reference for speeding up your immigration case is something called a service request. What is a service request? Basically, a service request is a formal inquiry that you're making with USCIS to inquire about what the status is with your case. In order to make a service request, your case has to be processing outside of normal processing times. USCIS has resources available online where they reference the current processing times for a particular case type. So you can look up the specific form and the specific case type that you're filing, and USCIS will show you what the current processing time is for that particular case type. If your case is beyond that normal processing time, you could submit a service request. And again, what service requests do is you're making a formal inquiry to check in with USCIS about your particular case. And this can have the effect of basically notifying USCIS that you're checking in to see what's going on, and it can have the effect of causing USCIS to basically look into your case more seriously and make a decision on your case. Now, tip number 4 is called making an expedite request, or a request for expedited processing. Expedite requests are different from what we talked about earlier, where we talked about premium processing. An expedite request is basically a special request that you're making with USCIS to speed up the processing of your particular case due to some circumstances. And USCIS has various situations that qualify or that are eligible to make an expedite request. For example, if there's some sort of an emergency. And basically, if USCIS approves your expedite request, they will process your case faster than normal processing times. Now, a couple of important things to know about making an expedite request. If you're going to make an expedite request, you should have documentation proving the basis of your need to expedite your case. And again, the reason that you're requesting the expedite should be a valid reason that USCIS would accept as a basis to expedite a case. Also, another important point to note, USCIS grants expedite requests on a case-by-case basis. Okay, now we've gone through 4 tips thus far, 4 options that you could potentially consider to expedite your case or to speed up the processing of your case. I want to conclude with option number 5, which is a writ of mandamus. Now, a writ of mandamus is essentially a lawsuit where you are suing USCIS in federal court based on an unreasonable delay of your case. As it sounds, it's a pretty extreme measure to take, but there's various instances where a case is just prolonged for an inexplicable amount of time, and in such cases, depending on the circumstances, a writ of mandamus may potentially be the appropriate action to take. So there you have it, 5 tips to speed up the processing of your immigration case. I hope you found this information valuable. If you know anybody that can benefit from this information, feel free to share this video. We're all about empowering you with knowledge, and so the more people that can watch this video that can benefit from this information, the better. If you like this video, please hit that thumbs up button. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for tuning into this video.